Good evening, grade 9s. I'm going to be looking at week 2's work of your development section. Last week we looked at a whole lot of concepts, things such as the economic, social, and environmental indicators, what contributes to a good quality of life, the GDP per capita. We looked at what is development and how development is determined. Now, determining how well developed a country is very, very important because it is important to know how well developed a country is so that we can compare it to another country. And more developed countries can learn, less developed countries can learn from more developed countries on how they can develop themselves. We all want to be a part of a well-developed country because in a well-developed country, we'll have optimal opportunities and access to resources, and we'll have a good quality of life. So one of your activities from last week was to make a mind map of what you think contributes to a good quality life. So some of the things that we've identified is mentioned in this mind map on the screen. Things such as enough food. Now, enough food, I think especially in a time such as lockdown, we all want enough snacks for when we're a little bit bored. Shelter, so it's getting a bit colder. It's lovely to be in a warm home. That is definitely good quality of life. Clean water, yes, so that we can drink it. A job and employment. Your parents need a stable job and employment in order to buy you stuff such as clothing for the girls and things. Access to technology. You want the latest iPhone or you want the latest smartphone. You want a smartwatch or whatever it is. You want access to technology. That also includes the things such as data. Also, the next one is good financial conditions. So your parents need to be in good financial conditions in order to support you successfully. We need social support. We need health and social services, access to hospitals, access to shops, access to grocery stores, and so on. Then we need leisure activities. So we all like chilling and hanging out and doing what we love, and that includes leisure activities. So leisure activities will obviously look a lot different depending on where you live. So if you live at the coast, your leisure activities might be surfing and longboarding, where if you live in the city, it might be shopping and going to markets. Then we need life satisfaction and purpose. You want to live your life with a purpose, and through that you will get satisfaction for your life. Social interactions, something we miss so much during this time, which is relationships that we build with our friends and our family. The ability to look after ourselves. You want products, you want certain things so that you can look after yourself. You want gyms, you want to exercise, you want to work out so you can look good for whoever you're trying to impress, that is. So you want the ability to look after yourself. And then access to good medicine and healthcare. So when you're sick, no one likes being sick. You want to be able to go to the doctor and then go to the pharmacy so you can get better as quick as possible so you can get back to school. I know you all want to get back to school. So that is our mind map of what we think a good quality of life is all about. And you can add to it, you can take away from it, and this will differ for each person because we all see ourselves as needing different things to have a good life. Now, everything mentioned above in our mind map, we put into 3 categories: social, economic, and environment. So under the social heading is everything that has to do with the well-being of people. So basically our quality of life. Economic has to do with money and income, and the environment has to do with everything we do socially and economically. What impact does it have on the environment? That is very important to note. And we've divided all of our sections from our mind map into 3 different columns that you can see at the bottom. A lot of these things will overlap. So if you look at something like self-care, can be social, but it's also economical, because we need money to do self-care, and self-care will help us socially. It will give us a better quality of life. Also, things such as a job or employment will overlap. A job employment gives us money, but it also gives us satisfaction, life satisfaction, and purpose. Okay, so they kind of rely off each other. So that is how these 3 categories overlap. So today we are going to have a bit of more in-depth look at ways of measuring development. So before we can measure development in all the different countries, we need information about countries in order to know how developed they are. We use different development indicators named wealth, health, and education. So wealth, health, and education can all be divided into different indicators. So our economical indicators will be wealth, social indicators will be health, and our environmental indicators will be the environment, obviously. Okay, so then let's have a look at our economic indicators. We have something called the GDP. Now the GDP stands for the gross domestic product, and it is the value in goods and services produced or provided in that country in 1 year. You need to know what GDP stands for. Gross domestic product. Very important. Okay? The next one is GDP per capita. So GDP per capita, GDP stands for gross domestic product. Per capita basically means per person. So you take your GDP of that country, the total GDP of that country, and what you're going to do is you're going to divide it by the population of the country. Divided by the population of the country, and that is how you're going to work out the GDP per capita. Per person, how much income does a person bring into that country? All right, our next one is, so that is our economic indicators, and these indicators tell us about the wealth and income of a country. How to work out the GDP per capita, like I just showed you, is very important to know. So you're going to take the GDP, GDP, not GPD. GDP, the total GDP divided by the population of that country, and that is how we get GDP per capita. You need to know this formula. All right, our next group of indicators is called social indicators. Now, our social indicators, things such as the birth rate. The birth rate is how many babies are born in a year. The infant mortality rate. Now, the infant mortality rate is the number of babies per thousands who die before they reach the age of 1. So that is very sad, but that is the infant mortality rate. Literacy rate is obviously how many people are educated over 15. How many people over the age of 15 can read and write. And then life expectancy is how old are you expected to get in this country. And the death rate, that includes how many people die per year. So all of these social indicators can be influenced by economic indicators and by environmental indicators. And I'm going to tell you why and how that happens. So think about death rate. So if I don't have a constant job and a constant income so that I can afford good health care, then I will probably die much sooner than other people. So in this case, economic indicators such as money impacts the death rate, which is a social indicator. Then also the death rate can be impacted by something like pollution. You live in a very polluted area, therefore your health is deteriorating, you have no access to fresh water, therefore you won't live as long as a person with fresh water and little pollution. So you can see how these groups affect each other tremendously. Okay, so these indicators, social indicators, tells us about the conditions of the country. It tells us about the quality of life that people have in that country. Our next group of indicators is our environmental indicators. So environmental indicators can tell us a little bit more about pollution in that country. So there might be a lot of mines in that country or in that area. Urbanization, how many people come into that country to live there. Then we get renewable resources and access to fresh water. All of these things can be impacted by the economical conditions of the country, so businesses and what they do to make money, and it can also have an impact on the social side of things. If you think of because of the death rate, there's a lot of pollution and therefore the death rate would be higher, or the life expectancy would be much lower. So these indicators tells us about the impact that human activity has on the environment. Okay, so it is important to note, guys, that all of these different factors, all of these indicators all overlap and they are very dependent on one another. So it is important to remember that we need to develop all three of these subsections called economic, social, and environmental in order to make a country develop optimally. So it's very important to do that and to keep that in mind. We measure how well a country is developed. Thank you, grade 9s. That's all for today.